All right, we're going to start this thing off. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brendan Beatty. I'm the director of the Montana Department of Revenue. Governor Gianforte, when he was elected, appointed me to be the head of the Department of Revenue. And so at the end of the day, the buck stops with me. Everything that goes out of here is under my name. These people that work for me are here to give us a little education today. And I really appreciate the fact that everybody in this room took the time out of a very busy day to learn a little bit more about property appraisal and property assessment and how this works. Believe it or not, guys, my property appraisal went up as well, just like everybody else's. I understand that, but I also understand how the process works. So to kick off here, I'm going to introduce our presenters. These are experts. These are professional people that work for you, just like I do. You sign our paychecks at the end of the day. We're here to work for you. We're here to help you. So what we're going to do today is sort of explain in a very simple manner how these appraisal notices you've got work and to answer any questions you may have. What you're going to want to remember is we are the state of Montana. Our job, as required by the Montana legislature, is to appraise every piece of property in Montana at 100% of its market value. That's what my people's job is to do. All of the mills, all of the budgeting, and all of the bills that go with from that is a local government job, for lack of a better word. So my people are here talking about how we got to your appraisal, how we got to your value, and some whys and the whats that are on those documents. So with that, if somebody has an issue, you're welcome to talk to me. I'm here to talk to you. But we're going to have our people present first. So first thing I'd like to do is introduce some of my very, very qualified staff who have worked very, very hard on these appraisals and these documents and these presentations. First, I'd like to introduce Corey Hoffland. He's the division administrator of the Property Assessment Division of the Montana Department of Revenue. Robin Rude is the deputy administrator of the department's Property Assessment Division. Between them, they have over 60 years of experience in this and expertise. Next, I'd like to introduce Michelle Staples, who's going to begin this presentation. She's the area manager here in the Missoula area. She's one of state government's best, and I cannot be more proud to introduce her and to call her a colleague. So with that, I'm going to start, and we'll let Michelle kick this thing off. Thanks again for joining us.
Well, thank you, Director Beatty. Just appreciate you guys coming out today, and thank you for this opportunity for us to get in front of you and explain to you the appraisal notices that you've just received and where those numbers come from and how to read them. I'm going to skip back. So Director Beatty has introduced everybody. Appreciate that. In addition to standing at the door with the white jacket, this is Christy Richards. She is my co-part here in Missoula County. She's the property valuation specialist. And so together we manage the Missoula office for the Property Assessment Division in Missoula. In addition to Christy and myself, we also have all of the Missoula County appraisers, property valuation specialists that are sitting out in the lobby and are able to assist you with any individual questions that you may have on your property. So they're sitting in the lobby, they're waiting for you as we go through the presentation, or at the end of the presentation, if you have individual questions about your property, they are available to go through that with you. In addition to, at the end of today's presentation, we will have a question and answer session. We've got the microphone set up here in the middle, and so we will have time at the end of the presentation to go through any questions that you may have as a group. We're going to start off with a map of our field offices. Most of us here from Missoula County. Our office is located at 2681 Palmer Street. We're in the Palmer complex, and we have open office hours, walk-in anytime Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Also, our phone number is 329-1400. If you dial 3, when you get to that, it'll bring you to an appraiser who can speak to you about those appraisal notices as well. So in addition to our Missoula office, this is a map of all of our field offices across the state. If you happen to live in, be traveling through another county, the red diamonds show you where there is a manned field office. So at the Department of Revenue, we set valuation and we provide classification and valuation for all properties. And as Director Beatty said, we're required by law to set that valuation at 100% of market value. In addition to setting that market valuation, once we classify the property, is it residential? Is it commercial? Those pieces as well. We multiply that by the tax rate. The tax rate is set in place by the legislature, and we arrive at the taxable value. So we as the Department of Revenue set your value, your market value / assessed value, it's the same number, and then your taxable value. The local jurisdictions are where your millage is calculated and where your bills are then calculated, created, sent out to you, your payments come back into, and then they're distributed to the local taxing jurisdictions. So it's really kind of interesting, and it's important to note the differences between those two. We are at the state level, and I think it's actually kind of interesting. And Montana is one of two across the state, or across the United States, that this is done at the state level instead of the county level. Just provide some additional checks and balances. So if you are new to Montana or do business in another state, we would otherwise be known as the county assessor's office in another state. So really kind of an interesting piece of information there. So running through some property tax basics, your property taxes are an ad valorem tax, meaning your taxes are levied in proportion to your property value. You're going to pay taxes if your home is valued at $200,000. You're going to pay taxes on $200,000. If your home is worth $400,000, you're going to pay taxes on $400,000. That's where it is important that you pay attention to those notices and that market valuation of that we've set. So property tax basics, there are three components. We as a department set your assessed value or your market value. The legislature assigns the tax rates and the exemptions, and then your local governments are the ones that calculate your mill rates, your special fees, and your charges. So again, state law directs us to set it at 100% of market value. Market value is defined here. It's the value at which a property would change hands between a willing buyer and a willing seller, neither being under any compulsion to buy or sell, and both having reasonable knowledge of relevant facts. So in mass appraisal, which is what we do, we build, market value is determined by building models and using those sold properties to apply it to the unsold properties, to apply it to everybody. So not only are we driven by law to be market value, but we're driven by law to be fair and equitable. And so in mass appraisal, it's also dependent on your property characteristics. This is one of the things when you go out to our website or if you give us a call, let's make sure your property characteristics are correct on your property. Do we have bedroom count, bathroom count, basement finish, those kinds of items. And so this is why we are coming out to your property. If you've recently purchased or sold a property, we're going to come out and we're going to verify those characteristics. We're also going to send you a sales verification. You may have received a letter from us in the mail asking you to verify those characteristics as well, or we're also going to call you. So we spend a good amount of time trying to run through that information and making sure that the sales have been verified by the characteristics, but also that there's been market exposure, that there's no kind of family transaction or anything like that. We want to make sure it's a true arm's length transaction. So once your market value is established, then there are the tax rates. So currently Montana has 16 different tax rates, and a full list of those can be found on our website at mtrevenue.gov. Of those 16 tax types, those are things like residential, commercial, agricultural, industrial, personal property. And so each of those classifications have a tax rate, an individual tax rate. And those tax rates are set by the legislature. Residential is 1.35% currently, and commercial is 1.89%. Those are the biggest ones that we deal with at this moment. So you have your market value, then you have your taxable value, And you achieve that by multiplying that market value by that tax rate. And then you come to your actual property taxes. So this is why we're here, right? Our appraisal notices, there is an estimate of taxes on that appraisal notice. And it's a huge number this year. But that is an estimate of taxes. It's really important to note that piece. That is using last year's millage. What is millage? So every year, the department is required by law to provide a total taxable value in each taxing jurisdiction to those jurisdictions. Your fire departments, your city, your county, your TIF districts. We provide all your school districts. We provide each of those districts a total taxable value in that district. They take that number, and so we're required to deliver that the first Monday in August. And so that's why, again, it's an estimate right now because we haven't set those values. We've provided you with your new numbers, evaluation. We want to make sure those are accurate, and then we will certify those values over to the county to just make sure that that checks and balance is there. It allows us this time to be able to coordinate with you guys and go over that information and share where those values came from. So once that taxable value is delivered over to the county or to the local jurisdictions, that's August 7th this year, first Monday in August, then those taxing jurisdictions take that total taxable value and put it up against their budgets. What are their operating costs? And from there, they determine how many mills are needed to get to their budgets. A mill is 1/10 of 1 cent, otherwise known as 1/1000th. So that is the factor of what 1 mill is, and that's what we're looking to see. And so the estimate on your assessment notice is using last year's millage. We have the honor today of having current commissioners with us, and in speaking to them, it looks like we're looking at least a 25% float down in our mills to be able to be within compliance. Compliance meaning there is a mill cap. So it's a very complicated process, and it's definitely something that the local jurisdictions are going to know more about than I'm going to know about. And so there is a mill cap. It's set in law, and because our valuations have gone up so much across the state, there's going to have to be a float down in mills because we can't just continue at that high millage rate. It takes inflation into consideration, it takes previous budgets into consideration, and so you can see on this equation it's equal to the previous year's budget plus half of the average rate of inflation for the prior 3 years plus newly taxable. It's a lot of components. And this mill cap affects your general local taxes. It's also important to note that, or your general local millage. Any voted in millage does not get affected by that cap. Any state school mills, that doesn't get affected as well. So there is a cap, but at this point in time, we don't really know exactly what that's looking like. Your local jurisdictions don't know what that's looking like because it is August when we send them over the total taxable value, and then they will spend August and part of September finalizing those numbers, and then we should have true millage come end of September, early October. So that is where I feel like that's where most of our questions are coming from. Most of our interactions, most of what you're reading, it's just important to know. It is an estimate, and largely because we're using last year's mill rate because that is what we know was in place. One thing we get is a lot of questions of where do my tax dollars go? Missoula County, it's fantastic. We've got on our tax bills a breakdown. You can see each individual component of where your tax dollars are going. So this right here is a pie chart it's out of our biennial report on our website. And this is a statewide graph. You can see in this graph, the local schools took 32% of the taxation, the county took 28%, and then the cities took 11.26. Again, this is a statewide breakdown to give you an idea of where taxes go, and it's going to differ from county to county. All right, so our piece. I want to walk a little bit through our website, mtrevenue.gov. At the top banner, if you click on property, you're going to get to this orange page. It is our landing page. It is a great resource, guys. Something that we've spent a lot of time on, and it's got a lot of pieces. Some great information to click on. In the middle of this page, there's an property appraisal notices. And if you click on the learn more about your property classification and appraisal notice, you're going to see this. This is what you've all just received in the mail. And so I'm going to take a moment and run through. Column 3 and column 5 are important. Column 3 shows you what your previous valuation was. That's your previous market value. In this example, it was $302,000. Column 5 is your current assessed value. That is what we believe, that is what we have calculated and analyzed the information to set your new market valuation for your property. This is the number that if you're calling our office, we can chat with you about. Could you sell your property for this? If you can, great. If you can't, let's talk about why not. Let's talk about how we got to that number, okay? So those are important numbers to pay attention to. Also on this, on your appraisal notice, you can see number 1, that's gonna be your classification. In this example, it's a residential. So you have your market valuation of $413,700. Your classification is residential. So as I indicated, your tax rate is 1.35%. So if you take that 413,000, multiply that by 1.35%, you're gonna get $5,585 as the taxable value. From there is the mill cap. That's the unknown the mill, excuse me. That's the unknown at this moment. The known is last year's. In this example, last year's was 705 mills that needed to meet the budget. So when you take that 5,585, multiply it by 0.70575, you're gonna achieve that tax estimate of $3,941. So we want to take a minute to run through that calculation because that's the estimate, that's where we're coming back to. But again, your market value is ultimately what we can discuss. We just kind of wanted to give you the basics to understand what these numbers are on your appraisal notice. So again, going back to our landing page, our home page, there's also a find property information in the middle of the page. And that find property information will bring you to a site that looks like this. Again, guys, a great resource. You can put your address into it, and it'll give you all of the information that we have on your property, all of the public information that we have in your property. Meaning if you recently purchased, your sale price isn't going to be out there. But your bedroom count, your bathroom count, your square footage, your land mass size, all of that information is out there once you put your address in there. So this is a really important piece. I would highly recommend take the time, go out to this, or give us a call so we can make sure those characteristics are accurate. Okay, so the valuation process. How do we get to the market value? Yeah, it's at 100% of market value. Could you sell it for that? How do we get there? So January 1 is our general assessment date. This is also in statute, it is state law, that we assess property as it sits January 1. Meaning, if you have new construction, where was it at January 1 of every year? If you have destruction, where was it at January 1? If you had a dwelling that you tore down January 15th, it was there January 1, so you will be assessed for it for that whole year because that is, January 1 is our assessment date, okay? Also land splits. If you decide to carve off a part of your parcel, if it's after January 1, it goes on to the next year. So in addition to that January 1, every year we're paying attention to what's on your property. We're also in what's called a 2-year reappraisal. So the notices that you just received are for 2023, but it's for a valuation date as of January 1, 2022. The legislature requires us to reassess values every 2 years. We used to be on a 6-year cycle, but then in 2008, when things dipped, that 6-year cycle didn't really, it kind of fell in the middle of it. So then legislation came in, they changed it to a 2-year so we can stay with the market a little bit more. So every 2 years, you are going to get one of these notices from us. And the reason that it's January 1 of 2022 is because we're looking at data. We're looking at the sales that happened in 2020 and 2021. And then it takes us about 18 months to go through that information, make sure that they're valid sales, make sure that that information is correct, set some models, and then be able to then turn around and put a new valuation on everybody's property across the state. So it's a little bit of a process. It takes a lot of steps and a lot of time to go into those pieces. So we're on a 2-year reappraisal, and so your current market value on your assessment notice is as of January 1 of 2022. So when you ask yourself, can I sell my property for this? It's could you have sold that property for that January 1 of 2022. Okay, so when we talk about market value, the state, we use 3 approaches to valuation. Your cost approach, the sales approach, and the income approach. Cost approach is just that. It is a replacement cost new, less depreciation on your structure. What would it cost to replace your home today using using material costs as of January 1 of 2022? And then from there, we apply, so we develop that replacement cost new, we depreciate it out depending on the age of your home, and then from there, we add any local multipliers if needed, and then we add your land value back in and arrive at a cost valuation. So that is the cost approach. This can be utilized on residential property, commercial property, agricultural property. And then we have the sales approach. The sales approach we primarily use in residential for the market analysis. Montana is actually a non-disclosure state, and what that means is that sale prices are not public information. They're not just general public information. However, when a deed is recorded in the state, an RTC, a realty transfer certificate, accompanies that deed in your local clerk and recorder's office, and then that information comes to our office. So we receive the realty transfer certificate from every transaction that happens in the state. And so once we get those pieces, that's when we're verifying, making sure it had market exposure, making sure it was just an arm's length transaction, in addition to verifying those characteristics. From there is when we build the models off of that sales database, and we run our statistics against it to make sure that the measurements work on everything. It's called a multiple regression analysis. And from there, we arrive at the best 3 to 5 comps for your property, and we arrive at a new market valuation. Commercial properties, we run an income approach. What are your lease rents? What are your rental rates? What are your leases? What are your expenses? So we as a department send out a questionnaire to commercial business owners or commercial property owners, and it is a self-report of what they're selling what they're leasing their properties for, excuse me. And then we take that information and we set it apart into different commercial types, your apartments, your hotel, motel, warehouses, things like that. We develop a range of rental rates within the information that we've received back, and we set an income approach to the commercial pieces. So in short, that really, like your market value, we look at it in 3 different approaches. We look at both the cost and the sales. We look at both the cost and the income. And then we set a valuation on what we feel is the best fair market valuation to you, to your neighbors, to everyone across the state. And then that comes to you in these appraisal notices. Once you receive this appraisal notice, this year they're dated June 30th. And so it's important to note that we have a 30-day window to discuss that valuation. So that 30-day window ends July 31st this year. And this window allows, we have what's called an AB 26. It's a request for an informal review. This is where you look online, you say, hey, you know what? My bedroom count is off. Excellent. Fill out one of these forms, come and visit with us, and let's visit about getting it changed. Or if you say, you know what? I don't know if I could have got that I don't know if I could have got 400,000 for my property at that time. I think I could have got 350. Fill out a form, let's sit down, and let's go through it. At this point in time, since Montana is a non-disclosure, that form has a confidentiality agreement on it that allows us to be able to discuss the actual sale prices with you and the information that we utilize to develop your market value. Okay, so it's important. So 30-day window, we're currently in that 30-day window. July 31st is the cutoff on that date. So if there is a potential adjustment to be made for 2023, as long as you get in by July 31st, that adjustment will apply to 2023 and 2024. Any requests made after July 31st will roll to 2024. At that point in time, everything will be locked down. We'll be sending those values over to the local taxing jurisdictions for August 7th, and we'll look at 2024 at that point. Okay, so some of the frequently asked questions that we've heard so far, that we have gone through, are my taxes going up? And we don't know that. We don't know necessarily your taxes are going up. Again, it's an estimate on your taxes. It's an estimate using last year's mill rates. And so until those budgets are set and until those calculations are done on the mill rates, we can't answer to that. And ultimately, our office is just talking about your market value. So that's just something that I would say we don't know necessarily that answer. And I would say, reach out to your local jurisdictions as well and kind of visit with those guys. I haven't made any improvements to my home. Why is my value increasing? Improvements is a description that we use to any improvement that's made to raw land. It could be asphalt, it could be a shed, it could be a home. It is an improvement made to that raw land, meaning that there's some kind of structure sitting on that raw land. And so you may have not done anything to your property from 2021 to 2023, but because of what the market did in 2020 and 2021, because of what construction costs did in 2020 and 2021, we are all seeing that increase in our valuations. And it's statewide. It's not just Missoula County. Why did my value go up more than my neighbor's value? We get this a lot. And so I would say no two properties are exactly alike. And if they are, let's have a conversation. Let's look at it and see what's going on. But realistically, we take everything into consideration. Bathroom fixtures, different assets within the homes. We take garage, spaces. We take driveways. We take everything. And no two properties are exactly alike. And so if you want to call, we can run through that. It's also public information. So just on our website where you look at your property, you can look at your neighbor's property, right? But it's mass appraisal. And some people go up, some people go up higher. It's just depending on the characteristics within the home. You're trespassing on my property. Why don't you call to schedule an appointment to visit my property? This is actually in state law as well. It allows us access to come onto your property for taxation purposes. So we need to be able to set a fair market value to your property. And without coming to your property, we can't do that, right? We need to get the external measurement for your home. And so we're doing external measurements so that way it can be fair and equitable across the state. But also it would be next to impossible to call everybody to say, hey, I'm coming out to your house on this day at this time. Missoula County, we have over 57,000 parcels. And so we have 14 appraisers that cover that area. We don't know where we're going to be at. We have an idea of the area we're going to be at, but maybe one visit takes longer than another. So we do our best. We advertise to let you know that we're going to be out and about, and we are doing these things in addition to will always be in a state vehicle. It says motor pool on the side of it. We'll always have an ID. We'll have business cards with us. You'll be able to identify an appraiser. If they come knocking on your door, they're gonna have a tablet or pen and paper, they're gonna have a laser, and so they're going to knock on your door first before they start to access your property. All right. That we've never come to your property? All right, well then we can sure schedule a visit. Okay, yep, Director.
Now, she doesn't have to answer that one, I will. It may feel like Big Brother. Talk to your legislator. My people do not get to use discretion in determining what they can and can't do in arriving at what the legislature tells them to do, okay? So, I may not disagree with you. She's the wrong person to talk to. I'm the wrong person. Your legislator. Call the governor. Call your legislators, okay? So let's talk one at a time. I couldn't hear you. You are correct. Now, by law, we're required to hit each property once every 6 years. Visit every property once every 6 years. Now, we're understaffed. Our people are doing their dangdest. But yes, we are required to go there. And I'm sorry, I still can't hear you. I would disagree with you there. Now, what I will tell you is that's why we have that AB 26 form. If you look at that and say, hey, there's something on there that I think Beatty's staff did wrong, bring it in. Explain it to my people. Say, hey, Beatty, you thought that the faucets were gold plated. They're not. Let me show you. That's why. I don't know, and Michelle can answer whether it shows up on the website that whether we visited it, but all the rest of that information is on there. The comps aren't.
Yes, you bet. You can. You will not see the comps because that is confidential. Yes, but you will be able to identify what approach was utilized for your property and what characteristics that we have on your property. Yes, sir. Yes. It's also, I can tell you on your appraisal notice, if you have so for example, this right here was used by market valuation because it's a combined total. So it was using market value. If you have a breakout of your cost of your land and of your building, it was used by cost. Yes. Yes. Yeah, go for it.
Want me to pick questions and you answer?
Go for it. Not directly. We're going to try to come out to your property first. We do receive permits, If you take out a permit to do something on your property, we receive those monthly, and that's when we'll come out. That'll draw our attention out to your property. We're not sitting on Google Earth watching everyone's property.
So if you go on the website and you find out that you used a market appraisal approach and that there's a huge difference between the depreciation method and replacement method, can we get our taxes lowered from doing that?
No, it's 100% of market value. So depending on...
No, you just told me. You just said that we use these two methodologies. One's the market sale approach, and the other one is the depreciation off of the replacement value plus land value. If that differs, if you're going into that and I find the replacement value of my home plus the depreciation on the age plus the land value, and it's substantially different than the market valuation, are you going to lower my taxes if I do that? Because you've picked the highest number, okay? So I'm just giving you a what if this is the case, because I haven't run the numbers on my house, but I will. So I want to know if one is substantially different than the other, will you lower my assessment?
Thank you. Yeah, we will not lower your taxes because we don't do your taxes. We do your assessment value. And in regards to your cost versus your market approach, between the two analysis, we do see what's fair and equitable and what's more appropriate. In addition to your cost, not only is it's not taking just your home and depreciating it out, we apply a market condition to that as well. So it will be dependent on what those components went into. I would sure be happy to talk to you about the difference between your two if you go on and look at it. The appraisers do. Do you want to take that? Yeah.
Let me take a stab at answering that. It's not a personal opinion. These people are professionals and they're trained. Now, I will be the first one, and the legislators in the room will attest that I've said this before. This is an imperfect system, everybody. Nobody's going to sit here and tell you this is perfect. And appraisal, by definition, is an estimation of market value of what your property hypothetically would have sold for on January 1, 22, by a hypothetical seller to a hypothetical buyer, right? I mean, that's what an appraisal is. When you did one for your mortgage for your house, it was the same thing. There was an individual trained in appraisal making an estimate based on all of the facts available to them as to what that thing would have sold for if you sold it on that exact date. So, this is far from perfect. And then top it off with its mass appraisal, right? We have to appraise every single piece of property in the fourth largest state in the country, right? That's why you got to look at your appraisal notice. That's why we're here, okay? So these people are highly trained. They spend their time in the field. They're looking at these properties. They're estimating values. They're looking at realty transfer certificates. They're understanding what the market is in these neighborhoods. So when they get a good example that you used cost versus market. Well, if we've got a brand new planned unit development outside of Missoula somewhere, there's 100 units and they're all cut out of a cookie cutter. They all look exactly alike. They're all on a quarter-acre tract. They're all 3-bedroom, 2-bath, blah, blah, blah. And 75 of them sold within 15 days of January 1, 2022. We got a pretty good idea in mass appraisal what yours might have sold for if it was in that neighborhood, right? It looks just like the other 75 that sold within X number of days. You start getting to unique properties where comparable sales are much more difficult to come up with. The cost approach might be the best way to arrive at what that piece of property is best valued at, because you can't find a comparable property. So that's why that cost is more of a we got to have it, because sometimes there are properties that there is no comparable for. You've all seen in the paper, that island in Flathead Lake that has a big mansion on it. Well, there aren't many comparables to that. How do you value that? You don't use comparables because there's no other unicorn out there, right? So That's why that's there. Now, if you think there's an issue, if you really think that the cost approach would be better applied to your unique property, that's why we have that checkbox. That's why we have these people, these experts in this office for you to come in and say, hey, I don't think this is right. I think cost is better. Can I walk through it with you? And these people will sit there and they will listen and they will do their job for you, right? But that's why those are there. And we have to have it for that reason. Did that help at all? Fair enough. If I can help you more, then no. Oh, good. Perfect. Go ahead.
I have a few questions for you.
Do you want an expert or do you want me?
I don't care.
Okay.
This is, first thing I want to ask is who came up with the time for this meeting? Because people who work may not be able to get off work. At 6 o'clock, people who have children might need to go and fix dinner. So you've already potentially eliminated a lot of people who would be at this meeting. That's one.
We did our best to accommodate everybody, and there are also Zoom meetings that you can attend. Anybody can attend to check in on. We're doing our best to hit 56 places with a limited number of staff and a whole bunch of work to do. So if you don't like the date, call me. Call my boss. The date's on me.
Okay, the second question that is really interesting is, when I got my appraisal, I've lived in many states, had many homes. When we moved here, I bought our house for $365,000. I was stunned then at our taxes. Now it's gone up over $2,000, which is utterly and completely ridiculous. But when I called the governor's office, they said, oh, we're having these town hall meetings all over the state. Guess what was not on the list? Missoula or Missoula County. Wasn't even on the list. I thought that was sneaky, to be honest.
Well,
I don't
let
trust it.
me tell you something. You want to know the truth?
Yeah.
The truth was there were threats of violence in Missoula, and I was not going to have my people subjected to threats of violence or real violence. That's what I thought. That's what I thought. I had a great 3-year vacation in Missoula called school, and I was surprised too. But believe it or not, there was a legitimate concern.
Okay.
So
question.
anyway, we put it in because I spoke to your legislative delegation and we said, you bet, we'll be here.
So anyway, the only way I found out was calling the Department of Revenue because we quit our paper. Here's another question that's really interesting to me. And that is, everything is predicated upon market value. I'm not planning to sell my house, but the potential is to chase people out and make them move who can't afford the taxes. I'm on a fixed income. So $177 a month.
I can't argue with you. We don't have, the people here, my agency, we don't have the ability to do anything about that. That is not the executive branch's job. The executive branch, which we are part of, our job is to execute the will of the legislature. The legislature is elected by the people in this room. You have legislators to talk to say, hey, the property tax system is a thing. It isn't working. What can we do to fix it? So that's why we have these 3 branches of government. Our job, we don't have the discretion, nor should we, in my opinion, are you interrupting me? Let's finish there. Let's just wait a sec. So that's why we can't, while I might agree with you, my taxes went way up too. I don't like it. But that's where it's at. That's what the current law is. If we want a change, we have to change the law. We don't get to change how we have to execute the law. I understand where you're coming from. I just don't have a choice. Neither does Michelle or Corey or Robin or any of these people out here.
Okay, my final question is, one thing is how are our tax money spent? Now, in the paper a while back, the Missoula City wants more property tax money. Every time I go by the lot that was the Sleepy Inn Motel, I'm reminded of how great they are at making decisions with our taxpayer money. So I am one fed up individual, and so I'll leave it there.
If I can give you 2 seconds on that, I hear you. That's the great thing about a democracy, and especially the way we're set up. Your local government is the closest to its voters and its constituents. if you've got budget issues with local government, talk to your commissioners or your city people. And if you don't like state budget, you talk to your state people. But how the money is spent that's not where my agency lives as far as property taxes go. Let's see, are we lined up at the mic? Do you want an expert or do you want me?
I have a question about the assessment. We built our house 30-some years ago and haven't been planning to sell or anything. So if you use valuations of houses around us, usually when they sell the house, they put in granite countertops, they upgrade new flooring and all that. So that valuation is not the same as a house with 30 years of wear and tear and kids running around and the countertops are scratched up, the floors are scratched up, the carpet's wavy and, you know, that sort of thing. So how do you get a value on that house against one that's selling, that most people upgrade when they sell?
Yeah, you bet. So that's part of that verification process. I agree with you. That's where we keep our comparables to similar properties. We use a system to bring in the 3 to 5 most comparable properties, looking at the age your home was built, looking at if it's been updated, looking at your bedroom count, your bathroom count, your square footage, those kinds of things. So that it is being taken into consideration.
So they would know what the interior of our house is like?
If you haven't taken out a permit to update the interior of your home, we have no reason to come out to your property and to think that it's been updated.
So they would assume then that everything in the house is 30 years old?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm wondering why I received a little card in the mail that said if I applied, I could get up to $675 back on my 2022 or 2023 property taxes. How do you know?
Yeah, you
Why
bet.
did I receive that?
So I believe everyone in the state got those as a property owner. That's one of the rebates that came out of the legislative session, is that you could be eligible up to $675 a rebate. And if you paid $675 of property taxes in 2022, you could potentially be eligible to receive that. It's actually going to be on our website starting August 15th. We're opening up that application process, and then you have to apply by October 1st.
But why
And
should
so-
we have to apply if you're charging us too much to get money back? It should be ours.
I assume you'd like that question answered. This is basically a refund of property taxes you paid in past years. Now, where that refund came from wasn't. Yes, it's the way the tax cycle works. But what it is a refund that the legislature and the governor chose to send back to the taxpayers to provide property tax relief. Now, they didn't come up with that refund out of property taxes that were paid. They came up with those refund dollars from income taxes that had been paid to the state in the prior year. So that is a rebate to provide some property tax relief from a budget surplus. The reason you have to apply is because the legislature and the governor when they enacted this and the governor signed it, was there are certain requirements a property has to meet to be eligible for that property tax refund. And that's why there's the application. The reason you got the postcard is we're trying to get the information out to everybody as often and as accurately as possible so everybody knows it's available.
The requirement in the bill was that it's only for primary residences, not something we don't track. We don't have the ability to know if that's your primary residence and whether or not you lived in it for 7 months. So part of the application process is you attesting to the fact that it's your primary residence and you lived in that residence at least 7 months. So that's when there's an application process.
You want the the expert or the ugly egg?
It doesn't matter. So I'm Sandra Vasika. I'm on the city council here in Missoula, and I want to thank you for coming and answering our questions, even though there were threats apparently. So thank you for doing that. I just want to make sure that I have clarification with Title 15, Chapter 7, Part 1 of Montana Code Annotated. So basically what it says is that you have permission from the legislature to enter the property without permission, but you don't have permission to enter the actual household itself. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
We do external to keep it fair and equitable across the state.
Okay, and then also in it, it's mentioning that you do, the homeowner does have an ability to request in writing that the landowner or landowner's representative be present for the appraisal.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, I just want to let everybody know that.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for coming. So my question is, I want to talk about the state mills and the impact that's going to have on property taxes, because I understand city and county are capped. They can go up a limited amount, but it's as you talked through, half the rate of inflation for the last 3 years. So that's a limited amount. So even though these mills are going to come in at a much higher number valuation-wise, city and county will revise down their millage to accommodate that law, but the state mills, 101 mills plus that are on our taxes, are not being revised down. They're going to be at the full valuation, and I know there's a tax rebate for the next year or two, but in the long run, this is a huge impact on tax bills, and so I just want to talk through that when people see an increase, it may not be as much as what you forecast, but it'll still be significant, especially on higher valued houses, in terms of that mill, that the rebate isn't really erasing the state mills. You understand what I'm getting at? That's a significant component that is not being mitigated in any way, other than this tax rebate that's a one-time deal.
And you're correct. The only mills that don't float are the 101, what we commonly refer to as the state mills. They go to the universities, community colleges, and the school equalization fund. So the state actually doesn't keep a dime of any property taxes, to be clear on that. But you are 100% correct. Those mills don't float. So everything else being equal, the tax bill would go up because of those mills. The reason Michelle says we can't tell you if your taxes went up or went down is you might be in a jurisdiction where values went up so far that the local mills went down so far, it might offset that 101 that didn't float. We don't know that, and we don't do that, right? We're not mill calculators. So, but the gist of your comments, 100% correct.
Yeah.
The legislature chose not to float those mills. And again, that's a question. That's one of these things that we need to work through. In fact, I am going to be in the middle of working through that with your legislative delegation. And I don't care what stripes they wear. I'm working with anybody to try to figure out how to make this thing work. But you are correct. They don't float. And that will have an impact.
Yeah, thanks. I just think it's significant, and people need to understand the difference and the different impacts on these bills. And I don't think we're going to see anything in Missoula. It's with the trajectory of property values. I don't think it's going to erase those state mills. And I love that it goes to schools, but it is nonetheless, it's going to be a significant windfall that I hope is used wisely. But it's going to be significant, and that's going to be probably a huge chunk on those bills. So I just wanted to articulate that.
And you may be right, but I couldn't raise my hand and say that I know, which is why I'm having to hedge it, because I can't honestly tell you that I know.
No, well.
And that's why Michelle couldn't either.
Yeah.
But you're right, they don't float, and that will have an effect.
Right. Okay, thanks.
I have a comment to make which will maybe take some heat off of you folks. And Councilwoman Vasika might correct me on a few things, but how many people in this room know what a tax increment financing is? You all should know, and you all should call your city council representative and say, what the heck is this? And explain it to me, because my understanding, I just became aware of this like within the last year or two, that we pay taxes, and if you're in a tax increment financing district, a big chunk of your taxes go right into this fund, and that fund is used for blighted areas. The Stockman's Bank downtown, y'all are familiar with that brand new bank, they got, and you can correct me, I believe it was 1.5 million of our tax dollars from the TIF fund towards the building of that new bank. And then the funny thing is when the city said, we're going to give you this money, oh, but wait, we don't have that money. We need to take out a loan to give you that money. Do you know where the city borrowed the money from? Stockman's Bank. So there's a problem locally that we all need to hold our local city council people accountable. And there's an election this fall, so call up everybody running and ask them what their thoughts are on tax increment financing. There was also a bill in the legislature this last session to eliminate TIF districts. And you know who was there to keep them in place? You know, the leagues of cities and towns, all the people that were going to benefit from them. The taxpayers were disregarded, so that bill didn't make it in the session. Maybe we can get one in the next time and maybe it can get passed through. But anyway, 85, as I understand it, 85% of our property tax bill is controlled locally. Every time the schools want you to vote on a levy, that affects us. New libraries affects us. It all affects us. So it's great to have all these things, but in the end, the chickens come home to roost and we have to pay for them. And it's being reflected in this. So I'm a native Montanan, born and raised here, never lived anywhere else, never want to live anywhere else. I'm kind of regretting that we've been discovered because our tax values are going up because everybody wants to live here. But just a thought, hold your local people accountable for the way they're spending our tax dollars. Thank you.
How are you all?
Good, how are you?
The first thing I'd like to say is how truly disappointed I am in the turnout today. We have 120 to 130,000 people that live in this county. And what do we get, 200 of us to show up here with something that impacts every single one of us? This is disheartening. It is disheartening. It is still disheartening, okay, to see that. I've known about this for a while now, okay? The simple fact is that if you look at some of the other counties around us, they probably have the same amount of people that are showing up here. That's just my comment, okay? What I'd like to ask now is, how many people here are elected officials from our state legislature? 1, 2, 3. All city of Missoula? Yes, city of Missoula. Okay. No, I'm sorry. I don't not that live here. The elected officials are though. I know you're from Missoula.
Yeah, I represent
Missoula. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Can our county commissioners stand up that are here? Huh? I know Josh Schlotman was supposed to be here, and I saw Strohmeyer a little while ago. Did he leave? They're both gone now. Okay. Could you go back to the pie chart that you had there? Because this information is all based on state averages. Okay? I'm sorry, this is based on state averages. Okay? The state here got almost 18%. Do you know what the state gets here in Missoula? No idea?
I do not.
Okay.
Off the top of my head. Well,
So-
oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I do actually. It's 102.5 mils.
Right, and now remember, you may not have heard me, but what we're calling state mills is school equalization, university, and a couple in places that there's community colleges of VOTEX. So what we commonly refer to them as state mills because they're 101, they're collected by the state and then they're redistributed to the school equalization fund and the universities and the VOTEX. So none of that stays at the state. It's collected by us, but then it's sent back out.
It's redistributed, right?
Right.
Okay, and that is based on number of people in the county.
Equalization, now we're talking Office of Public Instruction, and if I told you I was an expert in how they calculate school equalization, I'd be a liar.
Okay.
School equalization is a pretty complex thing, and it's been around, gosh, they put that in when I was in high school in the 80s. So it's been around a long time.
So I can't give you, okay, an exact figure for how Missoula compares to the rest of the state in taxation, okay? But what I can do is go online to an independent source, okay, and look at county by county what our tax rate in Missoula, Montana is, Missoula County, as compared to other counties, okay, in this state, okay? And
If I could say something, your
Yes.
tax rate on your properties is the same. The difference will be per each taxing jurisdiction, the millage will be different. That's different than the tax rate, but it's the mills, right? And those.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly, but that doesn't mean anything to us. What's important to us is what we're paying in our county, okay? And I'm gonna give you an idea, okay? My wife and I went to a place called smartasset.com. You can go in and you can pull out, okay? Or you can put in a property value. You can look at, by zip code, what you're going to be paying in taxes on a percentage basis. In Hamilton, okay, Hamilton has an average county tax rate, according to Smart Asset Value, of 0.59%, okay? In Polson, 0.71%. In Kalispell, 0.91%. In Bozeman, 0.89%, the second largest communist city in this state. In Billings, 1.04%, and in Missoula, 1.24% is what we pay in taxes. If you compare that, okay, what in the world is this county and this city spending our money on? Huh? We know what they're doing, okay? Okay? We know what they're spending it on. Last cycle, okay, election cycle, we voted down a bill that would pay for additional homeless peoples to be housed. And then this mayor declared an emergency, okay, to reverse that unilaterally and take that money out of our pockets. We in this county have got to start wising up, okay? We need to do something to get rid of the people that are in power in this county. That's what we have to do. The legislature, the county commissioners, those people have got to leave. We have got to vote them out of office. That's all I got to say.
Okay, if we can circle this back around to what we're here to have to talk about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Beatty, I have two questions on behalf of a constituent who wasn't able to make it today, specifically regarding mobile homes. I guess the first question is that mobile homes typically depreciate in value over time. However, the recent reappraisal notices that were sent out, my constituents in mobile homes saw an increase in their value. So I was wondering if you could elaborate on how the reappraisal worked regarding mobile homes. And then the second question is, since mobile homes are considered personal property, not real property, is there any difference in how residents of mobile homes have to claim the rebate?
Okay, so no difference on the rebate, to answer that question. And in regards of mobile homes being a personal property asset that depreciates, it's affordable living, and the market on those pieces blew us away, even when we were doing the data on those pieces. And so we were seeing 6 digits on, you know, a 14-foot wide mobile home that's selling for $100,000. And so across the state, with the market analysis that was done and because of the sales that have occurred on these homes, there was a large increase this year, yes.
Thank you, and perhaps we can follow up afterwards. But I guess where some of my confusion is that, you know, a resident in a mobile home park, for example, they don't own the land, they just own the physical home, and they're paid lot rent on the land. And so the actual physical manufactured home, I mean, that's something that, unlike land, which is going to appreciate, I mean, just the physical use of that depreciates often to the point where, I mean, it gets harder to move those homes. I mean, I think that if, you know, most of my constituents at least, if they were to sell their mobile home today, the actual home, they would not be able to sell it for what they paid for it. I mean, it's pretty well documented, the depreciation over time. So I guess my question is there any, like, could you describe more of how how mobile homes, how the actual appraisal process worked, like what data went into formulating the new value that they got in the DOR letter in the mail?
Yeah, you bet. We went through, just like your residential homes, we went through and analyzed the cost tables, construction, what it would cost to replace it new today, but we also looked at the sales that happened in those areas. And in large part, it is the sales that went through. We had a large amount of transactions on mobile homes that sold. And yes, they don't get assessed for land. It's just the mobile home itself. They're only paying taxes on that piece. And so we do take all of that into consideration, and we try to compare apples to apples when it comes to making sure that we're valuing like the same sizes to one another and the same characteristics. And so largely it is the market that was created over 2020 and 2021.
Thank you. I guess my final follow-up on that, was the age of the mobile home included in that calculation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Couple of quick questions. First, you mentioned on your website there's a portal that we can go and look at our property details. Is that the same as the Montana cadastral site?
It is, you bet. And in
Okay.
Missoula County, we have a third resource as well that I didn't touch upon. It's the Missoula County GIS is also phenomenal.
Okay.
Yep.
And then secondly, you mentioned the 1.35% tax rate. My understanding that is set by the legislature. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's in regards to your taxable value, not your actual taxes.
Right. I mean, that's how they calculate the taxable value from the appraisal. That's set by the legislature.
Yes.
So I would encourage everybody in this room to contact your legislator, contact the governor's office, and say, do something about that 1.35%. Because they have my understanding is the legislature could lower that in an unusual situation like this where we have skyrocketing property values. I think the legislature could lower that, so I encourage you to call your state legislator, call the governor's office, have a special session, and drop that 1.35%. Thank you.
My comment is the same as his was about the 1.35%. It seems unconscionable for the state legislature to do something like that. Our taxes, the reason we're here, I think all of us, is because our taxes are going up so much. Mine looks like they're going to probably go up 20%, which seems outlandish, and I wonder if the legislature realizes that that's what's happening all over the state of Montana.
Hi, thanks for coming. I'm Stacey Anderson. I proudly represent the People's Republic of Missoula on the City Council. That's a joke. My question, I have a couple actually, is the Department of Revenue alerted the governor and the legislature prior to the start of this legislative session that there was a potential for significant increase in the millage rates and because you knew from looking at assessments that the taxable values were drastically increasing because Montana is the second highest state for in-migration during COVID, correct?
Yes, we do report that information to the Revenue Interim Committee.
Right.
Yes.
So the legislature knew that this was coming prior to the start of the legislative session and didn't do anything to address it. Correct?
I'm not sure that's 100%. It didn't adjust the tax rate. The legislature did provide the rebates. They provided a number of other different county offset provisions for some roads and some different school things. So the problem with that kind of question is when the legislature does this, there's a whole lot of moving parts, not just one little thing. The legislature, right, wrong, indifferent, I don't care, because my job is to just make happen what they tell us to happen. Didn't adjust that tax rate. Now, I can speculate because taxable values or market values across the state did not uniformly rise the same amount, right? So I live in eastern Montana. My property value didn't go up like it did in Bozeman. So adjusting a tax rate isn't as simple as one might think. The legislature did a number of things to try to mitigate. Did they do enough? That's the citizens' call.
Well, I would imagine the room full of people on a sunny July afternoon would maybe say that we don't agree that they did enough, and because they didn't bring down the rate. My other question is in regards to this movement from 6-year evaluation cycle to 2-year evaluation cycle. I mean, this isn't the first time that Montana has had a boom in being discovered, people moving here, and we will have busts coming forward. I think that there has been, with the movement of 2-year evaluation cycles, it is much more market driven than, kind of evening things out. We saw a huge increase. Maybe it will level out, maybe it will keep up. But can you explain to those here the difference between moving from 6 years and how taxes and the valuations were assessed over the 6 years, and then now that we're at a 2-year reevaluation cycle, how that the assessment happens more frequently and kind of isn't leveled in? And when did that, how long had the 6-year appraisal been in place, and then when did we move to the 2-year reappraisal?
I can give a shot at that 100-part question here. Let me give it a shot. So if I remember right, it was in the early 2000s that the state went to the 6-year. 97? Okay, 97, been around longer than I thought. They went to a 6-year reappraisal cycle. And what they did with that was they had a 6-year cycle, so it only got revalued once every 6 years, and then they phased that increase in value in over the course of 6 years. So even though we valued you at 100% of market value, as they required us to do, then that value was, that difference between where it started and where it finished was phased in over 6 years, right? So then there's a little history here. Some of us have been around Montana long enough to remember 2007-8, when it just so happens that the first year of our reappraisal cycle for the next 6-year cycle happened to be 1/1 of 08, okay? Anybody that was here remembers that property values were going nuts in 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and then the alleged Great Recession started. The bottom fell out. However, the law required us to appraise those properties at 100% of market value of 1/1 of 08. Well, by 1/1 of 09, there were places, especially in like the Flathead, that had lost a pile of value. And by law, the taxpayer couldn't recover that difference, right? Because of the way this phase-in worked. And let me tell you, that was an adventure. So the legislature, and I think correctly, said, well, we can't be doing that, this big 6-year thing, because you get caught in these wild swings. And there were people that were caught in a bad way and with no legal way out, right? Nobody anticipated 1/1 of 08. So then the legislature came in and said, well, let's do this every 2 years, so we're more reflective of what's really actually happened. And I think their heart was in the right place. Well, once again, as perfect timing always happens, what do we hit? But our first year, our 1/1 of 2022, was just right at the peak of the COVID boom, right? And so now all this stuff is appraised at this peak value again. Now, maybe they'll trail off, maybe they'll keep going, but you know, that's kind of a funky history lesson in how we got where we got and why we are, and it was the legislature trying to react to things that weren't working how everybody wished. Their hearts are in the right place trying to get this right. And of course in Montana, we've got two sources of revenue, right? Generally our income taxes and property taxes. And so they were trying to balance that in situations very similar to this. So that's how we got where we are. Is that most of the parts of your question?
It is.
Okay.
And final, and then I'll let other people speak. You guys, collect a lot of data around taxes. Do you collect and average how much people pay in taxes? Because I think it will be curious to folks to understand, the average Montanan pays X in taxes, and they're getting a potential rebate of Y. Is that, those are probably not numbers that are going to be close to each other. Is that something that the Department of Revenue collects in terms of averaging?
Well, it depends on which tax you're talking. Like because we don't collect property taxes from Montanans, right? We collect that little piece of the state piece, that 17% of the 101 mills, and then redistribute. That's all we really know about tax dollars collected for property taxes. Now, we have a tremendous amount of information on how much income tax we collect because we collect it. But we don't have a number that says, here's every dime that every Montanan paid on average, right? Because we don't do some of those taxes.
Okay.
Did that help?
Yeah, no, it did. I just, because it's a one-time rebate that isn't going to reflect most anybody's tax increase. And I know that wasn't you who did the rebate, but I think that, a mitigating factor of a one-time, you get to buy a snow blower, but going forward, your taxes are going to continue to go up and up based on this, number that you're assessing today, I think is, it's something that would be curious to know. Because I know here on Missoula, you can go to the city of Missoula and you can see how we average to everybody across the state in terms of what your taxable per capita, which is a pretty even apples to apples district is. So I think that would be an interesting statistic if the Department of Revenue, very understaffed, could potentially come up with if you could get more staff at future legislative sessions.
Well, and actually, to be honest, it would require a legislative act to say all the counties and cities and school districts and all that would have to send the Department of Revenue how much money they collected and from where for us to even have the information.
Well, that all is public knowledge, so it's pretty easy to put that together. So, but thank you for coming, and I appreciate you taking the questions. So.
Thank you.
I get a little nervous when I talk in front of people, so I wrote down what I wanted to say. You mentioned that it's the legislators who make this decision. It's also important to point out that the legislatures opted to give significant income tax cuts to our wealthiest Montanans. And it doesn't seem fair to have our wealthiest people getting big income tax cuts when folks are getting reamed over the coals on their property taxes. What could the legislature have done?
That question is above my pay grade. That's a political question, a question that I don't know. Honestly, I'm not a legislator, and the way they deliberated, they arrived at what they did, and what else could they have done? There's a whole lot of different things they could have done. Use your imagination, but I don't know what else. Right now, this is what we've got.
Okay. Well, I think the end game is sales tax, so everybody watch out.
Good afternoon, Sean McCoy, farmer in Missoula. First, I wanted to express my appreciation for you guys and your staff being here. I understand that you guys are taking an enormous amount of heat that I don't believe is responsible to come down to you guys. It's the state legislature who should be working on these issues. So I greatly appreciate your guys' effort, and you are tolerating the ire that you don't deserve. My question was quick and simple. Were there other threats of violence or aggravation from other parts of the state? Or was Missoula County an isolated event that you guys were thinking about safety and canceling or not having?
Yeah, I was going to say, I can speak to Missoula is pretty isolated, and yeah, I can.
I'll tell you.
If you don't know.
That's the only one I know of. Well, yeah, the only one, it's, you know, I don't want to make them up. But, yeah, Missoula is the only one I know of.
Thank you.
Thank you. I realize that in doing your jobs, you're working with set formulas, and I understand all of that. I would just like to quote from a letter put in probably many local newspapers, but this came out in my hometown newspaper a week ago from Senator Greg Hertz, who is chairing the legislature's Senate Taxation Committee. And regarding the legislature setting the rate of 1.35 for residential and 1.89 for businesses, that has been in effect for many, many years. And perhaps Representative Thane can verify that. I don't know how many years, maybe you know. And also, the main determination of our taxes is the mill rate, as you have pointed out today. The mill rates are controlled by your county commissioners, city councils, school boards, and we, the voters, when we vote in things that our tax dollars pay for, which is everything that we vote in. So I would just like to reiterate that thank you for what you shared today, but that we, the people, need to hold our elected officials in the legislature, city council, and county commissioners accountable. We, the people, have the power. They work for us. We don't work for them, and they represent us. So it pays to go to city council meetings. It pays to go to the county commissioner meetings, see what their agendas are, see where your tax dollars are going, follow the money, and then hold them accountable for how they're spending it. Because they love to spend, it's not their money, they love to spend it, and we are the ones that are providing those dollars. So again, 85% of our property tax bill is controlled locally. So just want to leave that with everybody to think about.
Was wondering, with my property tax, you value by the sale of, hang on, 3 to 5 sales that you look at to estimate my property tax. Would I be able to see those properties that are sold? How would I find that out?
Yeah, you bet. You can actually go to one of the people outside here, and one of the appraisers that are sitting in the lobby, and they can help you with that piece, or you can sure come in and visit with us. And we have what's called a confidentiality agreement, if you're willing to sign that, to say that you're not going to take those 3 to 5 comps and share them with your neighbors, because it is a non-disclosure state. We would be happy to go through those pieces with you.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Hi, Bob Cole from Missoula. I realize that you guys really can't do anything. The legislature needs to do it. But in this forum, I know that you're the only people that are here for the representatives and us to talk to try to get our ideas back to the legislature in a lot of ways. I know you have representatives and such here too, but I'm sure that you're asked what in these forums do people mostly ask you. And I'm wondering why we can't get some kind of a legislative action on grandfathering in people that live in their houses for X amount of time, 10, 15, 20, 35, 40 years like I have, so that our taxes don't go up as much. And because there's an awful lot of people on set incomes, people that are getting booted out of their houses because they can't afford it, or spending an awful lot of money on your assessments of how much our houses are worth when we plan on just digging a hole in the backyard and being buried there. So I really would like to see the legislature try to find some way that they can keep taxes at a level state for people that have been in their houses for a long, long time. And I just want you to take that back to your people. Also, I just feel that the taxes on a 2-year plane are just mostly because the state wants income. At least on a 6-year assessment, even though it was gradually brought up at a time, like you were saying, I guess. And I don't completely understand all the rhetoric, but at least it was kind of like a grandfather for people that lived in their houses for a long time. They would be assessed at a certain amount, and they knew that it was only going to go up a little bit, instead of these great big huge jumps. And I can't ever see you guys lowering the taxes. I don't know that I've ever had a tax bill that's come to me that's been really lowered in the whole time I've lived in Missoula or any place else. So I really disagree with that. I think it's just all the money driving the 2-year, and maybe you can explain that to people. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know what the inner thinking of 150 legislators was on that. What I do know is there are budgets that everybody has to meet. There's expenses of government, and they arrived at what they did. Now, I was around when the 6-year crash disaster happened, and I can't tell you there was anybody I know of no one whose goal was to just raise taxes. And I can honestly say that. That doesn't mean there wasn't any, it just means I don't know. Or I don't know what they were thinking. So, a lot of times with everything, and especially with taxes, it's a reaction to something that happened. And that's what happens in a legislative situation, that's what happens in your county commissioners, that's what happens at your city level, that's what happens at your federal level. So many things are a reaction to something, right? Right, wrong, or indifferent. Sure. You know, ironically, now taxes are different than property valuation, which is what we're here talking about. But property values did go down in a lot of places during the crash. The unfortunate part was we had that 6-year cycle in place. And for whatever reason, and I wasn't part of it, so I don't know, they didn't adjust that cycle until shortly thereafter. So that's how that reaction happened, right? And that's how what so much of this stuff is. It's somebody trying to solve a problem that we already ran into, that we've got happening. If you had a question, did I hit what you needed? Okay, great, thank you.
I have a question regarding the Montana property tax relief. I have a constituent in Ward 6 that has lived in their condo for over 8 years, and in last December they sold it and moved to another home in Ward 6, so they probably don't get the $675, do they?
If they're primary residents, they do. Oh, go ahead. You said.
So what I heard was if they sold their primary residence and moved into a primary residence, then they will get that.
Exactly, yes.
They will be very happy to hear that.
As long as it is their primary residence. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's why I have experts here.
So I just got a couple things, kind of with what he said. You know, in the in the crash of 2007, my taxes never went back down. So with that being said, with what you're going with these huge increases, I know quite a few realtors, and they're all saying it's coming and it's coming hard. They're having trouble starting to sell homes already. Are we going to see a drastic drop then if it happens, or are we going to have to wait 6 years? If the property values decrease so bad?
We are on a 2-year, so if the sales prices start to decrease drastically, your valuations, the piece that we control, will see a decrease, yes.
And then I had another question, maybe you don't know. Is there a way, besides just calling, that we can maybe prompt a special legislative session on this, since it is statewide and it's so big?
Well, I know there's a petition, and some of your legislators in this room are actually part of that, and I don't know where that's at the governor's office at the moment, but You know, that's the great thing about this country. Actually, the government does work for us as citizens. So if that's something you're looking for, or if you're looking for any kind of meaningful change, you either pay your $15 and step up, or get a hold of your legislator or your city councilor or wherever, and get engaged, get involved. And that's how things change, is when the citizens step in and talk to their elected representatives. We're very, very lucky to have that option. There's a lot of places that don't have it.
The reason I asked is I've got a few rentals here in town, and I'm going to be that landlord that they think is getting greedy. The fact of the matter is I'm only raising my rents for taxes. And so I'm wondering, that's why I was wondering about the legislative meeting, if you knew that, that's all.
Well, there's certainly a process, and that process has started. Whether it gets there or not, I have no idea. I'm not part of the legislative process.
Brevity is not my strong point, but I'll try. I want to apologize to you that you felt threatened, or that any of your employees have been harassed like that. It's not the people we are here, really. Montana property tax relief is the subject. I'll try to stick to that, but when we moved here 19 years ago from Mississippi, I found myself paying $400,000 for a house that didn't even have air conditioning, and I was stunned then. 1 year ago, June 4th, we moved from that house to a house that was built in 1960. I love the house, but it's ancient. Okay, and it's near the Frenchtown irrigation canal, so I've got water for my horses and my mule. And for the first time in my life, I've got my critters in my own backyard, and I'm stoked about that. The guy that I bought the house from moved right across the street. We're buddies. What my tax assessment is 76% higher than what he was paying in just 1 year. I don't know how you can explain that. The assessment that they give us shows 7 outbuildings. I got a loafing shed with a tack room attached. I got a garden shed in a 60-year-old house. There's nothing there that to me is valued at that. I mean, yes, I understand where you get your numbers, but this is a ticking time bomb for seniors in this county, in this state in general. The more land that they remove from the tax rolls and put into wildlife stuff for the elk or Marshall Mountain over here, every piece of property that they take out of the tax base for green purposes makes our taxes go up even higher. Somebody's got to pay the bills. But the bills come from those pie charts right there, where they got to have new school buses every year. They got to have the latest electric this, electric that. Spending is totally out of control. And your answer, I understand, write your legislature, call your congressman. We the people are not in charge. They ignore us. They send us back form letters that are written by a secretary somewhere. You'll never get to talk to John Tester or the governor. It's not going to change. We're all here wasting our time and yours because nothing's going to change. They spend too much. The money on education is admirable that we want to educate our children, but frankly, my kids got a better education in Mississippi than they did in Frenchtown. And I'm sorry, but it's a fact. The budgets are out of control and nobody listens. My only real question for you is this request for informal classification and appraisal review, which I will be filing. I'm told that means you pay your taxes, but they can't cash the check. Is that correct?
If you pay under protest, yes. Or the check gets cashed, but it gets put in a protest account.
Okay. Well, my real issue is I think anybody and everybody, and it's probably why this was so poorly advertised, Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you are listening. Hello? Yes, you are listening. Anybody and everybody needs to file one of these, and this has to be addressed, because eventually, all of these elder people who are worried about how they're going to pay their taxes are going to be in default, and it's a ticking time bomb that's engineered by our legislature. Thank you for your time.
So, you know, if I can try to answer one question and address another thing, I actually know personally your legislators, and they listen. The vast, no, that's not a joke, and that's not a laughing thing. This is the truth. Our representatives and senators at the state legislative level get paid virtually nothing. They work their butts off. They answer for a lot of different stuff. These are well-meaning, good people. They really are. I might disagree politically with some of them. That doesn't mean I don't think they're good people and that they don't listen and that they're not there for you. Now, I got this deal even running my agency. I got 675 employees. I ask for people's opinions. Sometimes I have to make a decision that might not be popular with somebody else that in my management. So we're lucky. We are really, really fortunate to be in this state, in this country, that we have such good people that are willing to basically volunteer to do all this. And it's a huge amount of work, a huge amount of pressure. And they deserve accolades. They don't deserve to be accused of being not listening and non-responsive. They may not agree with you, but that does not mean they didn't listen, okay? Now, as far as your outbuilding issue and all that, I would really encourage you to take that right out to one of these guys or gals at their computers and say, hey, there aren't 7 outbuildings if there's not. And I've got this and that. That's what these people do. And remember, mass appraisal is just that. The appraisals get better and better if you bring us better information. We can hit it closer. The problem is the market. Now, if there's something, if we've got what the property is wrong, or maybe we're wrong on the market. Maybe you could say, hey, wait a minute, the identical thing right across the road was X less. Show our people, and they will make adjustments if they're warranted. That's what we do. We do it all the time, and we're very good about it. I've got great people working for you here. Take advantage of that.
Yeah, my question is, I'm really interested in this, is how many people who ask for a reappraisal are actually successful?
No, that's not right. I promise you that. I wouldn't sign off on one of those at all, ever, I promise. So, so why don't you pick a microphone and take a turn here? But as far as asked for a new appraisal, well, your AB 26, you come in, and actually that, I'm trying to characterize that as it's not an appeal, it's a, hey, we need to relook at this. That's your really your first shot at an individualized look at your property, rather than the mass appraisal system that we have to do to hit every piece, right? So everybody that brings that AB 26 in and asks it to be looked at, it gets looked at and redone. Sometimes there might be a disagreement, but oftentimes there's adjustments that get made.
Do you have any statistics on that?
We don't have a statistic on that as to...
See, I don't have any confidence that if somebody goes through this effort, it's going to be productive. Okay, that's one question I have. The last question, you said something really interesting. Talk to your county commissioners, your legislatures. How many of our legislatures and county commissioners actually took time to be here today? And are they listening? Are you listening to us? Every single person I mentioned is, at Chick-fil-A, I was in line and I talked to a guy and he was from Hamilton, and I mentioned this meeting. His taxes went way up. I have yet to meet with anyone whose taxes haven't gone up dramatically. So I hope you listen and act on this, please.
My name's Dave, born and raised in Missoula, 66 years. I love it here. Helena's a beautiful town. I really appreciate you guys coming over and stopping off in Missoula. I read the paper. They said you didn't want to come here for some reason, but we're all in this together. If you look at your tax bill, I pay mine direct. I own my house outright. 2006 taxes were $3,700. Now they're $7,000 for me. If you look at your special assessments the county and city have imposed on us, $17 in 2006, $800 this year. Parks and Rec fees doubled last year. The county's leveraged over $30 million at the fairgrounds. They built a $600,000 concrete steel fence. It's frivolous. They can't even repair a Lolo Street bridge for $1 million. I've been on them for a year and a half, so we're all in this together. But if you guys really look locally, it's a money-hungry eating machine, and it's bad. These guys are up here getting 200 eyes on them. They're just trying to make everybody happy, but everybody's got to look locally first and then go to Helena. Our local government wants $11 million to redo South Avenue. We just did it 25 years ago, and it's brand new. So I appreciate you guys coming. I don't like the higher taxes. We need to do something about it. It's too bad the legislature didn't vote in those tax breaks I read about in the paper, but maybe they didn't work. But we all got to look at locally and statewide to solve this problem. My neighbors are leaving. They're leaving. They're moving out. They can't afford it anymore. I'm looking at Nevada or Idaho because it's pretty cheap. There's no sales tax in Idaho. Go to California, it's a huge income tax, and they have 11% sales tax, plus the property tax is horrendous. So it's not that bad in town if people would just get after the local people from spending, and we appreciate you guys coming over. Thanks.
Well, hi, Senator.
Thank you, Director Beatty, for being here. My name is Shannon O'Brien, and I am a senator. I don't want to steal your show, and I didn't want to steal your show. This is what you're doing, and I'm grateful for that you are doing this throughout the state. But I want folks to know that there are many of us here who are legislators, and we are listening, and we read the paper and letters to the editor, and many of us do pick up the phone. Many of us do reply to our emails, especially if they're from emails from Missoula are a bright flag for me, and I know lots of others. I'm going to throw you up here. Representative Mark Thane and myself are both on the Interim Revenue Committee. We actually have a meeting tomorrow in Helena where we will be discussing this. I'm sure these very things will be on the report we'll be getting. But we are the people. You all have been saying it, and we are it. And help us. Help us fix this problem. It is a problem. And I was one of the, there were 3 of us in the Senate leadership who did request a special session to fix this problem, because this is a problem. And that is not something we take seriously. But folks, this is a problem, and if we do it together and put our heads together, we can fix this, okay? Your city council members are here in the House. Your county commissioners, 2 of the 3 were here earlier. We know that this is a hot issue, and I'll just stop there, but know that we're here and we're listening, and we'll be sticking around. If you go to the website, the mt.gov website, that's the best way to get a hold of us. You can look us up on there, send us an email. My cell number is on that. I think other people have their cell number. Call me or text me. Thanks.
Whoops, I broke it. Thank you for coming today, and I was looking forward to talking to the people at the state, because I'm kind of, I'm tired of researching and trying to find in law the answer to my question. What? Closer to, oh, now I don't like my voice. Thank you for coming. I'm tired of doing research and trying to find one law that has another part that you got to go to another law to find out the answer. So my question is, what properties are exempt from property taxes? And is it the same for every county, or can there be county exemptions as well? And before you answer my question, I'll just say my other thank yous and then I'll sit down. Our legislators and our city council members came to our community and explained the two pieces of property tax and the rebate to us. And we're very appreciative of the fact that they came and we hit them hard and we added some other things to them. So ask your legislators to come to your community and I think they will do that. Okay, and I'm hoping that we get to hear the rest of Michelle's presentation today because I learned two things I didn't know that are kind of important to my thinking. Thank you.
So properties that are exempt when you're doing your research, they're located in the state statute under Title 15, Chapter 6. 15.6201 is where all the exempt properties are. There are things like churches, nonprofits, there's many different types of exemptions. I just am drawing a blank right now since I'm talking in front of you, but that's where they're all located. There's also a difference because there are also the local authorities, the cities and the counties have the ability to provide a tax abatement to certain properties too, where they can reduce the taxes collected for a certain amount of time. And it depends on some qualifications, how many employees, their jobs they're creating, and their investment in the community, and those types of things are some of the requirements that some of the counties and the cities have for those types of things, but they can provide an abatement. We also have, located in that 15.6 section, Part 3 is the property tax assistance programs that we have available and the Montana Disabled Veterans. So if your income is at a certain level, and we have forms out in the hall that talks about what your income level is in order to qualify for property tax assistance, and then 100% disabled veteran also has some property tax assistance that they can get as well.
I didn't realize that there was something that you could actually do for people that were low income, that there was some kind of assistance. We've never seen anything like that. I'm a native Montana. Me and my wife were both born and raised here in Missoula County and Ravalli County. We've inherited a property in Lolo from our parents, and it took every dime we had to keep the property. We had to go through a probate to do this whole property evaluation thing. It cost us $3,000. You know, I talked to the people in the county and they said, no, we just do this evaluation. And I says, the last time I did this, it cost me more money than I could afford to have this evaluation done. I can't afford to hire a real estate evaluation person, whoever it is, to come out and evaluate my property and then hire a lawyer to handle the whole thing for me. All they're going to do is tell me that my property value is what you're saying that it is. That doesn't do me any good. Like one guy was saying earlier, his income doesn't come up or down or anything, and the value of your property doesn't change where I'm at. I don't have the ability to pay the taxes that you're putting on me. When we got the property from our parents, our tax value was, or taxes were around $2,000 a year. In 4 years, you brought them up to almost $8,000. I can't afford it. We have a couple people that are living in mobile home court. We have a couple mobile homes. The county won't even give me a damn title for one of my mobile homes that are on that lot because it's so old. They said it doesn't have any property values. So then why are they increasing the taxes on that thing from $0 to $85 on that? They won't even issue me a title for it. That's one of the things that was there. All our rentals are right at, like you were saying earlier, they're right at what market value is for our rentals. You give us only one option to raise our rent on our people there, and they don't make any more money than I do. They can't afford to go somewhere else. All of the rentals in Missoula are going so high that people like me can't afford to even live in it. We spent every dime we had to keep this place that we have in Lolo. And now I realize you guys think that this property that was valued at $200,000 is now worth $500,000. That's fine and dandy. But like somebody said before, I can't remember who it was, is there a way that you can back off from the taxes for people who don't give a rip about selling their house or how much it's worth, that they just want to live here like they have all their lives, like my father did and like my grandfather did, without being driven out of here? You're raising my taxes to the point that I have to sell our property that our generations past have had. And now we can't even afford to live on it because somebody determined that it's worth $500,000. That doesn't mean anything to me. I drive a 28-year-old truck that I hope to God that it doesn't break down because I don't have the money to fix it. And I can't impose that on all of the people that were relying on me to keep the rent down to where they can even afford to live there. I hope that I can make it home. I got to stop at Walmart and buy a gallon of milk, and I hope I got enough gas money to get there. This thing is completely out of control, and it's Missoula County. And there was one thing that the lady, Steve Daines' office told me. He says Missoula County is taxed on the highest tax percentage in the entire state. My question is, why is that? Can they not bring that tax percentage down to where the rest of the state is at? And what gives them the right to raise our property values so much just because people want to come in here from all over the states to live here? I realize this is Western Montana. This is the most beautiful place in the world. But we shouldn't have to be driven out of here because we can't afford to live here anymore. This is just wrong. And it reminds me of the tyranny that happened when the whole Tea Party thing. You know, that's the reason we revolted against the British, is because our taxes were raised so high that we couldn't stand it anymore. These people here can't stand this anymore. We don't know what to do. I called every legislator I could get a phone number from. Matt Rosendale's office wouldn't even give me a phone number for the other people that I was trying to call. Steve Daines' office was the only one that would actually give me the time of day. I'm perplexed at where to go. You guys are the only people that they told me, he says, you're the ones to ask and to answer, that are supposed to answer to. And then you're telling us that it's the state legislatures that we're supposed to go to. Well, every time I called them, they either won't give me the time of day or they tell me to talk to you. So I don't know where to go.
Well, you know, I understand where you're coming from. Now what I need to do is tell you where my people have to live. And, you know, my employees that are doing these appraisals and things, their values went up too. Their wages aren't skyrocketing either. I empathize, I sympathize, and what I can tell you is I'm the head of an agency in the executive branch. We do not have the ability to decide, well, this guy isn't going to sell his house, so I'm going to lower his value. We do not have that power. And I will tell you philosophically, we shouldn't have that power because I'm not elected. The legislature and the governor are elected. And therein is the difference and why we revolted against the British. That was called taxation without representation. We have representation here. And I'm sorry if you're getting a runaround and you feel like I'm giving you a runaround. What I'm trying to tell you is the structure of how our democracy and our three-body system works. The legislature creates the law. The executive branch, which the Department of Revenue is part of, executes it. If the legislature were to put something in law that said, hey, this guy's not going to move, something else happens, that's what we would do. But we don't have that ability ourselves without being told by the representatives of the people directly. We're bureaucrats, right? We're that word. You don't want bureaucrats doing things that the representatives of the people didn't tell them to do, okay? So I empathize with you. Been here forever myself, watched my own taxes go up. Most of the people in this room are living in the same situation. We have representative democracy, and that's where it has to go. You have to talk to your people. If somebody's giving you the runaround, then vote for the other guy next time. Well, but that's how it works, right? Now that being said, so that's why we can't, if you feel like you're being pushed off, I'm just telling you the truth of how the law works, right? If somebody else is telling you something different, well, they're funning you. So now what you also were talking about some financial hardship matters, and Robin is an expert in how you can help with the property tax assistance. So I'm going to let her address that with you, okay?
I just have a couple of comments to make. One of them was your comment about the county not giving you a title for your manufactured home. And if it's older than 1976, it doesn't have a title. They no longer process titles. So if it's newer, if it's 77 or newer, then you should be able to get a title for that particular one. That's correct. All of them used to have a... And what year is it? Yeah.
But still, you raised my taxes on that. You won't even give me a title that says that I even own. How can they tax me on something that I don't even have a title on it to do that I even own?
So when the law changed, and I'm not remembering exactly how long ago that was, it was maybe 6 to 8 years ago when the Department of Motor Vehicle no longer accepted titles for mobile homes that old. There is a form in our office, it's called an AB 38 form, and it's a mobile home ownership transfer form. You can come to our office and fill out one of those to get that put into your name so that the ownership information is in your name. And they won't issue you a title, that is true.
So then if it's not worth issuing a title, then why is the property value on that gone up to where now I have, from not paying taxes on it, now I have to pay $100 a year taxes on it without even a title?
So whether it has a title or not doesn't matter to us. What we care about is it's a home, it's being used as a home, it's able to be used as a home, and that's how we're valuing it. Now, what's important to know for all of you, if you have an older home that you haven't done any updates to, or if you have a mobile home that you can't afford repairs on, or there's some sort of damage going on, you need to let us know. Because, like we've said, this is mass appraisal. We think that the information that we have is correct, but if you've got certain circumstances that we need to come out and take a look at, you need to let us know, because we can make adjustments for things like condition, and things like remaining useful life. And we can identify if there's certain adjustments that can be made to lower that value down. So if you have those circumstances, please go out and talk to the folks in the hall, come to our office, call us on the phone, we'll send you a form to fill out, because those are the types of adjustments we can make, but we can't make them if we don't know they exist. So please be sure and do that.
One thing I forgot to ask you, there were a few things on that paper that you sent us out. It was improvements that were made on our property. One was the commercial and one was the rural. The commercial went up $74,000 in improvements. The rural went up $40-some thousand in improvements. Nothing on that property has changed, period, in over 20 years. And I want to know, where is the $70,000 in improvements and where is the $40,000?
So is your property considered a mobile home park? So the improvements on that mobile home park is for the infrastructure of the mobile home park, the hookups and all of that type of stuff. So it's still appreciating, and still the cost, again, that's a replacement cost new scenario. That's how we're valuing that. And the cost to replace those fixtures and those hookups increases. And so again, that mobile home park is something that you can come and talk to us about, because if the amenities of that mobile home park are less than average or something different than what we have on the record, we can make adjustments to that as well. So please talk to us about all of the details that you have about your property to see if there's anything that we can do to get that value lower. So when we receive an AB 26, our intention is never to raise the value. Our intention is to review the property and make sure all of the characteristics are correct. So if we go out there and if we go out anywhere, not your property in particular, but if we go out there and maybe we find a garage that was built 10 years ago that we had no idea was there, we have to add that to the property. And in some circumstances, that may increase the value, but that's not our intention at all. Our intention is to go out there, review the property, identify if there are any adjustments that need to be made, and make sure that all of the characteristics of the property are accurate. That's what we're going out there to do. Sometimes it does mean we find some new construction or some construction that we didn't know existed, but typically we find things that we can make adjustments for. So.
So, as we were saying earlier, you know, the taxes is a separate issue than the valuation. And I would really encourage you, and one of our pros is sitting right there with her card, to sit down and talk it over with her. Let me reiterate, everybody, there is nobody on our staff at the Department of Revenue who's in the business of just jacking your value because they can. If these people manage an incredible crew of professionals that are doing their dangdest. They're trying to get it right in a very, very difficult environment, okay? So please take my word for it. Nobody is in the business of just jacking up your value so they can squeeze another dime out of you. I don't know a soul of the 675 employees that report to me that would do that, okay? So at some point, you can either take my word for it and try to get it right in your mind, or don't take my word for it and stay where you're at. Those are your two choices. And we've got some assistance programs for the low income. Again, all of that stuff is set up through our legislature. No, I didn't say you were taking advantage of the system. What I'm saying is we've only got so much we can do. So please visit with our people and let's see what can happen. Trust me, try it. Do me a favor, trust me, just a little on that one. Okay, I appreciate that, thank you. Let's do another one.
So I'm not going to drone on very long. First of all, I want to say thank you guys for coming here today, okay? And especially putting yourselves at risk, okay?
There are not many I'm afraid of.
Yeah, it does not surprise me that the only place that you may have gotten a threat from was Missoula County. That's how frustrated we are here in this county with what's been going on. It's a shame that 80% of us couldn't have stayed to listen to probably what was the most important talk given today by that gentleman. We are destroying native Montanans. We're destroying them. They can't afford to live in their own state any longer. My wife and I moved here 17 years ago. So I'm part of the problem. I'm part of the problem. I remember going to Libby 3 months after we got here, and we're in a little restaurant. I struck up a conversation with a gentleman from there, and I didn't look like I was from Montana, okay? Not even close. Never been in the backcountry, never been on a pack trip, okay? Never been fly fishing. Well, I've been fly fishing in Montana, okay? But I didn't look like it. The guy looked at me and said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Oh, my wife and I just moved to Missoula." And he said, "Wow." He said, "That's kind of neat." We talked a little bit longer, and then he looked at me and he said, "You know the best reason to live in Missoula?" And I said, "No, what?" I thought he was going to give me a pearl of wisdom, and he did. He said, "The best reason to live in Missoula is you're only 10 minutes from Montana." That's what he said. And it has proven right for 17 years. It's getting worse all the time. For those people that came today that are elected officials, okay, thank you. We need you. We need you to stand up for us. But what's more important is instead of these three people being up here, the city council, okay, the mayor, our elected officials from both the House and the Senate, if you want to make a difference, you have something like this here, and every one of you show up so you can hear the frustration from gentlemen like him, who's been here all his life, from someone like me, who 17 years ago came here, and I'm frustrated now. I'm angry. So if you really want to make a difference, you bring all of those officials together, you put them on that stage, and you don't come here for 10 minutes before the program and then sneak out the door, okay? That's not what you do. So I'll ask you if you can put that together. I would love to see it, and publicize it, okay? Just so people in this county can know how important this issue is to all of us. Thank you again for coming. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. And you know, believe it or not, somehow we got derailed off the rest of Michelle's education program. So she does have a little bit more. Whoop, there's one more question, then we'll let Michelle finish. You think you're good? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, you can hear me.
I can hear you.
I went to the county commissioners meeting. They have it in the afternoon, and I asked them, there was 2 people there. And I said, "Why do you have the meetings in the afternoon?" I said, "Everybody's at work." "Well, that's just, we figure if we have it in the evening, most people won't come anyway." And I wonder why today, it starts at 3. Well, you would have had 3 times the people here. If you would do it in the evening, maybe it's not convenient for you guys to come in the evening off of your business hours, but people have to work. If you ever come back, can we have it in the evening after work when people can actually attend?
I appreciate that. And, you know, my people are working a lot of hours themselves, right? And they don't get paid extra. So that being said, that's why we set up those Zoom meetings, Zoom educationals, so people can get on and watch, right? We're trying to cover a lot of stuff here. So I apologize if people were inconvenienced. We weren't trying to inconvenience anybody. This situation was a weird one. I'll be the first to admit it. So I'm sorry if anybody couldn't make it. We've got the Zooms. We got a lot of country to cover, or these people do.
A lot of our politicians, they won't even have town hall meetings. They're afraid to get heckled or a red flag in the air at them. They have Zoom meetings. It's like a lot of people don't want to do Zoom. I want to look you in the face and ask you a question and have you respond back. I don't want to look at some computer screen and I can't really communicate with somebody.
That's why these people are standing here.
I get it, and I thank them. I know how the system works. We don't really have a problem with you guys collecting the dough. It's the legislature, like we talked about. That's the problem.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Corey
We also have the majority of these slides in a presentation on our website that Corey and one of our colleagues, Bryce Kotz, had put on for the legislators. So the majority of this information is available on our website. So if your friends or neighbors couldn't make it, they can pretty much see all the same information if they log on to our website and play the video.
If nobody has any further questions or anything, I honest to God want to thank you guys. This is how we get better at what we do, is by public participation. The public coming and understanding how its government works and how it's the workings of how we talked about the difference between appraisal versus the bill and all that stuff. This is how we get better informed voters. This is how we get engaged people in their community. And so while I may disagree with somebody, a couple of things that were said or what have you, doesn't mean I don't appreciate having them there, and we really appreciate citizen involvement. That's what makes this a great state and a great country. And as soon as we start forgetting that, is when things go wrong. So please stay involved, stay educated, talk to your appraisers that are sitting out here if you've got a question. And we're all in this together. I know the legislators are tired of hearing me saying it, but I always call it a team game, right? We have the state, the county, the city, the schools, the legislature, the governor, the courts. This is a team game, and we all work for the taxpayers. We work for you. And make sure we're working for you. Stay educated, stay informed, and be involved. If nobody has anything else, I'm just going to thank you again and sign off. So thanks again.